I wanted to give you a quick look at the imperfect tense here. Just a little bit of background about how it's used in the New Testament. If you look at Daniel Wallace's grammar, Greek grammar beyond the basics, this is a pretty standard intermediate grammar. Um, he has a section on he has a section on tenses, so different tenses of the Greek verb. And if you go to this section and scroll into the introduction or preface here, here's this little chart where he gives you kind of a plot of how often different tenses are used in each of the moods. Of course, we're only looking at the indicative mood so far. You can see here compared to the present and the aorist being the most common, that might surprise you. Between the present and the aorist, the imperfect is very, very small in its use, very infrequent in its usage. A little bit more than the future, but the imperfect is far less common tense than the aorist and the present. And there's a couple reasons for that. I want to show you where we see the imperfect most commonly in the Greek New Testament. So I'm going to do a morphology search here. I'm going to search my Nestle Online Greek New Testament 28th edition. I'm going to start off with Matthew through Acts. This is obviously narrative literature for the most part in the New Testament, telling a story. And I'm going to look for verbs in the imperfect tense, and that's all I'm going to search for. And you can see here there's just over 1,500 occurrences. Yeah, Wallace says total there's about 1,682. So 15 of the almost 1,700 occur in Matthew through Acts. So you can see that the imperfect is primarily used in the narrative literature in the New Testament. If we look at Romans through Revelation, the rest of the New Testament, you can see that only 183 occurrences show up. So, it does occur outside of the narrative literature, but it is much less frequent in the other. And I'm noticing that most of these are technically the past tense form of ame. So ametha, eta, ain. You can see a lot of these here. Ametha, amen, ain. A lot of these are just the past tense form of the verb to be. So I thought that was interesting to kind of point out that the indicative mostly shows up in narrative literature, but you might be surprised that when we look at that narrative literature, the way that it gets used. So it would make sense to use a past tense in order to describe narration. In fact, we would expect that between the present and the aorist, the imperfect would be a little bit more frequent because most of the narrative in the New Testament is past tense. But something to be aware of: the present tense gets used much more frequently than the imperfect in this narrative literature, even though it's past tense.